What is up, everyone? Good morning again. It's your host, Carlos Ponce, and this is another live episode of Advancio Talks. And if you are just discovering us, well, welcome to the show. But if you've been here since the beginning, early 2022, you know what we are about. So, Advancio Talks is where we sit down with the people actually building the future of business and technology, and not just talking about it, but doing it. CTOs, founders, the folks actually making decisions that matter. So whether you're drinking coffee, commuting, or just curious about what's actually happening in venture capital, technology, finance, business, startups, stick around because today we got David Miles. He's the founding partner of ManchesterStory with us today. And David has got stories and insights you won't hear anywhere else. So let's jump right in. Welcome to the show, David. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos. I'm delighted to be with you today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. So, David, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about you. Anything you want to say is fine. Your background, your story, where you come from, how you ended up here. So tell us a little bit about you, please.
You bet. And we'll talk a little bit more about our firm, ManchesterStory, as we go through the podcast today. But we are based in Des Moines, Iowa, which is a major insurance center, and that's for a reason because we do early stage investing. But my partner, my co-founder, and I both grew up in Iowa, both on small family farms. So that's something not everybody knows about us as we get started. And in fact, the name comes from where my partner was born, a little town called Manchester, Iowa, and I was born in another small town called Story City. So we put those two together to form ManchesterStory. We're all about investing in early stage companies in insurance, financial services, and healthcare. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you about that. A long path from being raised on a farm to today, and maybe we'll fill in some of the gaps in between. But we're having a good time today.
I'm sure about that. All right. So you mentioned Manchester Story and how it all came together with the name. But tell us about the company itself. What is your value prop? How did it come about, and what is the genesis of the company in essence? What are you putting out there that's of interest and value to the audience?
Thanks for asking. And you mentioned some of the folks that you've had on the show prior to this, and mentioned how they are doers in the technology area. We are a venture capital firm, so we are backing those doers. We are providing the necessary resources so that they can do what they do. We are what's called an early stage venture firm. That means we invest at Series Seed or Series A. Quite often, we are the first institutional capital to invest in a particular firm. And we are typically the lead investor, which means not only do we negotiate the terms of the investment, but we get really active with the company. Listen, we don't make it happen. The founders make it happen. But we put a shoulder to the wheel as well to try to help accelerate their success and help ensure their success. So we'll go on the board of directors, we'll make introductions, we'll help them recruit, we'll help with subsequent financings. Very importantly, and again, I'd love to talk some more about this. Our investor base that has invested with us is largely out of the insurance industry. So it's insurance carriers and insurance brokers. We have 24 of those that provide most of our capital, and we make introductions to those carriers and brokers for the startups that we back. So we try to help be a supporting element and make a difference in their success, not just write a check.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Cool. Perfect. So thanks for elaborating on the company a little bit. And
Yeah.
so, I have a bunch of questions, and I'm going to try to go as they come to me. But of course, I would like to start by the beginning and the origin of the journey. So you spent over what, 30 years as a financial advisor, so entrepreneur, investor, before co-founding Manchester Story. So what would you say is the pivotal moment that made you say, InsurTech is where I need to plant my flag, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a really great question. All told, because I've now been at Manchester Story for about 10 years, all told now it's about 40 years. And it's all been around, or it's been chiefly around insurance. I was a external or a third party asset manager for insurance companies for many, many years. I also worked for one of the largest insurance carriers in the world for a time. And about almost 10 years ago, started looking at how the insurance industry needed to change and was starting to change. And
Mhm.
by that point, my partner, Matt Kinley, and I had been informally investing together for quite some time. And we looked around and we said, financial services, if you look at banks and credit card companies and other financial services companies, they've progressed a lot. Insurance carriers had not progressed as much, or the insurance industry. So that, sitting in an insurance center, having a lot of contacts in the industry, my partner and I said, we think there's an opportunity for us to invest in early stage startups that are focused on changing, really disrupting in many ways the insurance industry. And at the time we started, very few folks were even using the term InsurTech. Insurance was considered a subset of fintech. And
Mhm.
if you look at our first, they're called private placement memorandums, the document that you use to go out and tell your story to potential investors, it actually doesn't even use the term InsurTech. It says we're going to invest in financial services startups, companies focusing on financial services with a particular emphasis on insurance. But it didn't take long for that to all get shortened down into InsurTech. So it's a combination of my background, my partner, who has now been 30 years in the venture capital business, our location sitting in a major insurance center, and an industry that really needed to accelerate the pace of change of its technology.
So here's something interesting. You hold a JD from what, Harvard Law, and a Master of Public Policy from the Kennedy School. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
So that's not really the typical venture capital pedigree, so to speak. So how does that legal and policy background shape the way you evaluate early stage companies?
Yeah, in probably a couple of ways. One is my career has not exactly been linear either. I joined an investment firm that managed portfolios for insurance companies, bought that firm, sold it, bought it back again later, and eventually sold it and got into the venture capital business. So my career's been kind of well, I would say nonlinear. It's kind of moved different directions, and that's really good preparation for being a venture capitalist because you're dealing with companies, one, that are doing very different things. Even though we focus on insurance, we're touching various segments of insurance. Also, those companies need to try things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. They need to change direction. But to go back to maybe where your question began, I think the training as a lawyer, the analytical training, was very helpful. And in the Kennedy School, we're studying policy and regulation, and insurance is one of the most highly regulated industries that there is out there. So it was good to have that background, even though, as I say, I've sort of twisted and turned my career forward. It's all been good. It's worked out well, but it hasn't been a straight line.
Okay, yeah, interesting. And okay, so here's what I'm hearing. Manchester Story, this is my perception, sits like at the intersection of insurtech, fintech, and healthcare. right?
Right.
So what was that trifecta intentional from day one, or did the thesis that take shape as you started seeing an ideal flow?
Yeah, I just talked about evolution, and certainly we've evolved as a firm in a number of ways, and the technology has evolved. I'm sure we will not get through this conversation without talking about artificial intelligence, which was not on the radar when we started the firm. But one thing that has been consistent is that we targeted all three sectors from the very beginning. Now, we look at it through an insurance lens, but healthcare, I'm trying to think, something like 2 out of every $3 that goes into the healthcare system comes from the insurance industry.
Hmm.
And you look at insurance companies today, yes, they put risk on the balance sheet. That is, they write insurance policies to protect our lives, to protect our homes, protect our cars, but they provide a lot of other financial services to their insurance
Hmm.
as well. So we always thought that those three things made a lot of sense. What has evolved, so that was there from the beginning. What's evolved is that we've found some really exciting opportunities at the intersections. So the intersection of healthcare and insurtech, the intersection of insurtech and fintech, and some of our best performing companies. I don't know if I mentioned earlier, we're invested in about 50 companies today.
Wow.
Some of our best performing companies have been at those intersection points. So it's very much part and parcel of what we do, and I would expect that to continue.
So let's dive in a little bit about specifically about the InsureTech opportunity. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I know that insurance, is one of the oldest industries in the world, yet it still runs on legacy infrastructure. So, what has made it so resistant to disruption, and what is finally cracking it open?
yeah. I will start with props to the insurance industry. I mean, the insurance industry deals at massive scale, a tremendous amount of data. And they were early in the mainframe computing era to move to use of technology. But what happens is you make significant investment, you get onto systems that were maybe state of the art at the time they went on them, but then it becomes really difficult and expensive oftentimes to change. And I think that's one element. So again, props to the industry for a lot of what they've done over the years. But I think the other piece is that a lot of the technology that insurers have invested in has been has been operational inside the firm or inside the insurance carrier or inside the broker. And one of the things that has lagged is using that technology to create a better customer experience. Um, One of the things themes that we focused on long before AI came along is something we didn't create the phrase, but it has meant something special to us called empathy at scale. And it basically means, we've been in an era for quite some time of customers wanting to be able to get on their phone and do everything without communicating with a person or get on their computer or make a phone call. But different modalities, different ways of dealing with their insurance needs. But at
Hmm.
some point, when they need help, they want to go to a person. And when they go to that person, they want three things. They want that person to care. They want that person to know everything that they've already shared. And they want that person to have the expertise to be able to help them.
Hmm.
And the technology, um, the technology to do the second and third thing, the technology to know everything that I've done up to this point, so you are knowledgeable at the moment that I need your help, and that you have all the tools that you need to really be able to help me. That technology was lacking. It was slow. and it was expensive to convert. And so startups began focusing on those pain points, and the pain points are pretty massive in insurance, as well as insurance is huge. When we raised our first fund, we would talk to people and they would say, um, we're not sure we want to be in this niche of insurance. We would say, well, this is a $7 trillion niche that you're talking about. It is not niche at all. Nothing happens, nothing moves unless there's insurance because of the risk involved. So I may have gotten a little off topic there, Carlos, but
No. Everything.
it's a great industry that's doing great things, but it definitely needed to move forward in terms of technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in this game, in this world, I can sense that there are winners and there are losers. So let me ask you this: there has been a let's call it a wave of insurtech companies that raced massive rounds and then struggled badly, right? So what separates the ones that survive from the ones that don't?
Yeah, there are probably a lot of things. I will go back to sort of the first generation of insurtech companies, many of which um, broke new ground and got a lot of attention, and some of them went public and did not fare as well as they were expected to. I think some of the elements that caused that had to do with the notion that they could simply go straight to the customer, like direct to consumer. And it's not that isn't a valid channel, but customers today want an omni-channel. They and they and their need and they're looking for expertise. Insurance is very complex, so I think some of them missed that. And to us, what so there to us, what separates the winners from the losers, we've got things that you would expect, but they're still true and important, like the strength of the founders and their experience set, their tenacity, their persistence, the scope of their vision, whether they're attacking the right pain points. All those things are true. But then the solutions themselves really need to to be embedded into an industry that already exists, and that has all of these linkages out to the insureds. And I think trying to build an insurance company that's direct consumer from scratch is a
Mhm.
very tall order, and a lot of folks found that to be more challenging than they expected it to be.
Right. So, okay, now let's go and take a look from a different angle. Let's go to the investor's eye. So, when you
Yeah.
sit across from an insurtech founder for the first time, what are you really trying to figure out in the first, let's say, 15 minutes?
Yeah, it's and it's typically not that it matters that it's 30 instead of 15, except venture capitalists live their lives in 30-minute segments, just one 30-minute meeting with a founder after another, after another, after another. And we're going to invest in, well less than one out of every 150 or so companies. So we kiss a lot of frogs, as they say, but um, uh, it, so one that's predictable, but it's still very true, is you are underwriting the founders themselves, because whatever it is they think is going to be their path to success is likely not going to be. They're going to have to pivot some, but they're going to be building a company. They're going to be hiring people. They've got to persuade new customers to do business with them. So that's really critical. Other things that we look for are the size of the problem. Is it a big problem or a small problem? And we could get into a detailed conversation about that. But we're looking for massive problems. We're looking for really significant pain points. If it's just kind of annoying, it's hard to change. And so if you've got a solution for something Well, yeah, it'd be nice if that was a little easier, but it's not a huge pain point for you. You can deal with it. That's not going to be enough. When you're dealing with the insurance industry, it also has to be a solution that is auditable and meets the regulatory requirements from the beginning. And maybe finally, although the list could go on,
Mhm.
you need to have folks in the business that understand, and this is a tall order, that
Right.
understand technology and understand insurance. And it is not easy to find folks that understand both of those. And
Yeah.
and insurance is its own world, and of course we know technology is its own world as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of related. I mean, I'm hearing you, and I was going to ask you something similar because I was curious, for example, because InsurTech requires founders to understand both deep technology and a heavily regulated industry. So, would you say is it harder to teach, let's say, a tech founder the insurance side, or teach an insurance veteran to think like a builder? What?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It Well, I'll tell you how we solve the issue from our perspective. I
Yes,
don't know the
please.
answer, which is harder.
Yes.
They're both hard. So we just simply like we require that that both that expertise in both be on the founding team. So I remember well, there's a terrific cyber insurer that we invested in early, and we're still on the board, and proud to be associated with this team. But the founder was more of a technologist, and when we first met him, and he still is, and he's great. But I remember the conversations around, you've got to find somebody who's deep and who's as good at insurance as you are on technology, and 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 be part of the founding team,
Right.
because both are extraordinarily hard to learn, and you don't want this to be the teaching. This should not be where you're learning that for the first time, where you're teaching folks new skills.
Right, right. Um, Companies like Advancio, the show's sponsor,
Yep.
um, they exist specifically because insurance tech projects require people who understand both the code and the coverage. So, from your portfolio experience, how often does the talent gap, or not the technology gap, kill an InsurTech initiative?
Um, and when you say talent gap, Carlos, you mean like
Yeah,
somebody not knowing insurance? Is that what
the,
you're?
the people involved in the actual
Yeah.
creation, the engineering side of it, the development, working on the guts of the project.
Yeah, it does. It does. We've had, we've got the scars to show it in our own to show for it in our own portfolio, but we've also seen it with others. You just have to have those, and so to find it's special to find somebody who understands the technology and understands the unique aspects of the insurance industry. Both take years to learn, and you really, if you're going to be effective, like you can build the greatest technological tool, but if you don't understand the industry, you may not build the right tool, or you may never get it sold.
Mhm.
And the flip side, if you understand insurance, but obviously if you can't build the technology, then
Right,
you're a complete non-starter. So very important.
right. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, so, well, thanks for elaborating on that part. I mean, I was curious
Sure.
because when I work very closely with developers and engineers on the tech side. But let's leave the tech side for a moment, and let's talk about another aspect that I also think is important, which is governance, education, and maybe a broader impact, right? So, you chaired the board of Winnebago Industries for more than what, 6 years, and
Yes.
served on the board of Northwest Financial for 17 years. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
two very different businesses, right?
Right.
So how do you carry from what do you carry from those boardrooms back into your VC work?
Oh, it's really helpful. And in fact, each year we hold an annual summit for all of our founders and our investors.
Mhm.
And the last 3 years, I believe, last 3 years, we've held a session on effective board governance. You think about it, a founder is typically, again, a great technologist. They've got a dream for the business that they want to hold, that they want to build, and they've got an idea for how they're going to get there. But they've probably never, they probably most of them, sometimes we'll work with serial founders, but many of them have never built a company. They've never had a board of directors. They don't really know what their responsibilities are, either on a board or dealing with a board. And I've been fortunate to work with some terrific folks that understand fiduciary responsibility and board governance and how directors can be helpful through many different opportunities that I've had in my life. So I can take those lessons from Winnebago Industries. I mean, it's a it's a leading recreational vehicle manufacturer, an RV manufacturer. That's not
Mhm.
exactly spot on with what we do, or Northwest Financial, which is a bank, but I can take those board experiences and help the startups that we found when we go on their boards. We can help them turn their boards into an asset rather than just just a responsibility that they have to take care of. And so we're really proud of that element that we're able to contribute.
Great, that's awesome. Yeah, and you should. I mean, you should be. Okay, here we're coming up on time, but I still have a few more questions. Um, I think that in insurance, well, it touches every person and every business on the planet. Yet
Yep.
it is rarely seen as an exciting industry, to build in. So how do you make, let's say, how do you make the pitch to young engineers and entrepreneurs who could go build the next consumer app instead, for example?
Right, right. Um, I, I think um, the honest answer first is that by and large, these are folks that have selected to found an InsurTech related company by the time they come to us. So we are not persuading them that they ought to do that. But I think some of them come out of the insurance industry, so they know it. Others, a lot of companies get founded because the founder has had a particular experience. So they may have had an experience related to the insurance that they own that they just looked at it and went, geez, this this didn't feel like getting a ride with Uber. It didn't feel like going to Amazon. It didn't feel like even booking a plane ticket. I want my experience with insurance to feel better. So then it does. So a lot of it comes from that. I will say though, there are a number which we try to support, but I wouldn't say we lead. There are a number of programs going on um, in the state of Iowa and around the country um, where
Mhm.
insurance as a career option is really being um, um, put forward in a way that it wasn't for years. So I think that's one of the reasons that we're getting some great founders that are coming to us.
Great, absolutely. So I have one more
Yeah,
question, and that'll be my last
yeah,
question for you
yeah,
before we wrap up. So let's say that I'm going to ask about looking forward,
yeah, yeah.
into the future. So if you had to point, let's say, to one segment, within InsurTech, whether embedded insurance, parametric products, AI driven underwriting, or something else entirely, where do you see the most underinvested opportunity right now?
Again, a great question. I think as we look forward, that we're already in a world, I think, where there's sort of pre-generative AI and post-generative AI, and I expect that to continue. And AI will take on increasingly interesting shapes and forms. The place that I think it's still like early on, I think it's already impacting back office operations, it's impacting underwriting, it's impacting claims. It is impacting the customer journey and customer service. But I still think the biggest thing that will change will be will be on the customer experience side. If you looked out 5 years or so. The customer experience with insurance is there's still a gap there, and I think, but I think the tools are there. Come back to this notion of empathy at scale. I think the tools are there in a way that they have not been in a pre-AI world to address that customer experience and make it much more satisfying.
Okay. Thank you for elaborating on that part. David, any final words of wisdom for the audience? Anything you want to be remembered by in this podcast?
Well, I want to thank you. This has been a real pleasure. So just having the opportunity is something I will remember for sure. If you've got an insurance related idea as a technologist, we are happy to talk to you. We're easy enough to find, and we'd love to visit with you. There's lots of advice I would give to a particular founder, but I know we're running long, so I won't go into those. But there's great opportunity in insurance. I will say, without not getting into the politics at all of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, but one of the things that quickly became apparent was whether ships can move through there is going to depend on whether insurers will insure them to go through the Strait of Hormuz. And it's just, insurance is everywhere. So I'll leave it at that.
It is. I can attest to that. I got like 4 policies and different things.
Yeah.
Okay, well, David, it's been a great pleasure. How can people get a hold of you? Can you share your LinkedIn, your email, your website?
Yeah. LinkedIn, I think it's David Miles 3. I think, David Miles 3. That's kind of cool that I've got.
There's a 3 in there, right?
There is a 3 in there.
Miles
So there's probably only 2 ahead of me. That's nice. I like that. I've been there for a long time. Thank you for putting that up. And then my email address is dmiles@manchesterstory.com. Would love to hear from you.
Here it is.
Yep. And then our website is naturally manchesterstory.com, www.manchesterstory.com. And reach out to me certainly, but you can also, if you had a business plan or something, you can drop that on the website as well.
Yeah, and also, folks, if you're watching, remember that this is done live, but we're recording it, so it'll be put out there like over the next few weeks. Just stay tuned in social media because all the information to reach out to David is going to be in there as well. But just in case, just bookmark ManchesterStory.com, and that's the best way to get a hold of David right here. David, this has been a pleasure to have you here on the show. Stay with me as we go off the air, please. And the rest of you, remember that every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, we have, usually at 11 o'clock, sometimes we tweak it a little bit to accommodate the guests' availability, but we try to do it like just stay tuned on social media and on the website as well, Advancio.com. So every Wednesdays tentatively at 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, but we're here every Wednesday. Stay tuned. And folks, thank you for watching now and in the future. And see you next time as well. And thank you, David, for your sharing your experience with our audience.
Thanks, Carlos. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.